Hey everyone, we're going to be streaming soon, starting our lecture very soon. I'll be starting the lecture very soon. Thanks everyone for joining me on streams. I wonder where that lecture is. I have something going wrong in my, whoops, save. I don't know where that lecture's gone. Just going to say hello to everyone. Hi team. Lecture is starting now. Well, g'day everyone. Welcome to today's Comp 1720/6720 lecture. Bright and early at midday on a Thursday morning here in the School of Computing down at ANU. Today's lecture is the second of our more art-focused lectures. The lectures on Monday being more focused on, I guess, the technical aspects of the course, and lectures on Thursdays being to do with the different art topics that are related to art, interaction and computing, little bits of the history of art, and some more practical tips, I guess, towards how to create something which is artistically interesting. And if you recall, last week we were talking about this broad question of what art is as a big topic. And looked at that from a number of perspectives. And starting this week, I guess we're looking into more technical aspects of art, which will be related to different things that you can do to make your artwork stand out, be artistic, and have that special something that makes them exciting artworks in this course. So it's good practical advice. Just turning my sound down on my second screen so that I can hear what's going on with everybody. Just check the audience view over there. It seems like something's happening at least. Oh yeah, I'm visible, cool. Thank you for everyone who's here live joining me this morning. A few little brief course materials update. If you've gone to the website recently, you may notice that it's changed a little bit. Something has changed about our website. I'm just going to check that out. Whoa, it's all white. What's happening there? The website's changed. Oh my gosh. Well, I know that this semester there's been a lot of changes on websites at the ANU with a new visual theme for all of our websites, which is pretty exciting. It's nice to feel like you've got a fresh, modern kind of web presence for an organization. And I know you folks as students will have noticed that, because when you go to Wattle for your other courses, you will have seen the different web theme coming up. It's gone from that kind of yellow theme to this mainly bright white web theme, which is a bit nicer, I think. And as part of this, there's been some work to design new themes in our computing courses as well, moving away from the theme which was getting kind of old for our college. So I'm very happy that I'm the first course running in semester 2 which has taken on the new theme. And one thing that has happened is that because it's a new theme, because the website looks a little bit different, there's a lot of new code behind the scenes to make this happen. Some things aren't working quite right. You might notice something already not working quite right in Firefox. This little table of contents sort of should be appearing up there. It's not quite doing that. Little things like that will be sorted out over the next few weeks. I've posted on the discourse forum asking if anyone sees anything wrong, please let me know and I'll have a look at addressing it. But so far, all of the important stuff is here. Your lab tasks page is here, your assignment 1 page is here. It's all working the same as before. We've got a nice new page with all of the people involved in the course, which is really cool. There are The pages are all updated and working a little bit better. We've got the course outline, we've got the course policies. Be excellent to each other. I think you're all doing that. We've got our Getting Help page, which is a really important page. If you feel you need help with any aspect of the course, go to the Getting Help page and just read through these 5 tips of how to get help, because they really will help you make sure that you're getting accurate and complete information without kind of, getting emails that get lost in the wash. Sometimes I do receive emails from students, and if I can't think of the example, if I can't think of the answer directly, I might leave it for a few hours, and then there's like 20 more emails, and then I forget about it because a lot of things are happening with teaching. So there's better ways to get help. Make sure you read the website, go to your lab, start your assignments early, ask questions in the forum, and if you really need help with something, sending messages to the Comp 1720 admins group on Discourse is the way to do it, because then even if I forget, my tutors will remind me, Charles, this student's asking a question, we really need an answer, and then I will get to it. One thing you might notice is not quite complete is the labs for everybody, because I'm updating the labs for this course as we go. This course has been running for quite a number of years now in various forms. But this year, one thing I'm doing is making really clear pre-lab exercises for you for each week. And you can see the week 3 pre-lab exercise doesn't quite exist yet. I will get to that this afternoon. It'll be available by the end of the day. And the other pre-lab exercises, basically for the first 6 labs, aren't there yet. Some of them in the later labs are there from last year. But the labs are getting a bit of a brush up to make sure they all make sense for you. So sorry if you go to that in advance and you want to look at it quickly, you might just have to wait a few hours until I get that done. Now, let's get back to the lecture. Random chance. Something which is connected, maybe this is not exactly a random chance example, but something connected to what we were talking about last week about what is art, what art is, would be this idea of Mondrian's very simplistic, structural artworks, where he was just creating simple shapes, simple colors, and using space in a very effective way. And back in kind of the beginning of computing as a field, when there were folks designing mainframe computers just for basically designed to be huge number crunching calculators. They were not designed for running general programs. There wasn't even really a concept or an understanding of what a general program might be. They were really designed for doing one thing and one thing only, taking very large amounts of information that we might now use spreadsheets for or something, and calculating outcomes, calculating things about social security systems or banking details or payments for people, all these kind of very high volume calculations, weather calculations, these kinds of things, big computing problems. But there were folks doing some interesting pieces of research, and one of them was a computer programmer called Knoll, who decided to have a look at using computers to draw things. And he realized that he could start to draw things that looked a bit like the artworks of Pierre Mondrian. Of course, at the time, in the 50s and 60s, it wasn't, I think probably Mondrian was still alive, so it was, maybe he died in the 40s, maybe, I'm not quite sure about that, but it was not such a long time period between his life and the start of the computing era. And one of the artworks was this, or one of these circles. One of these is an actual Mondrian artwork, and the other one is a program which was created to create artwork that looks like a Mondrian artwork. And I guess one question is, can you figure out which one is which? You can tell me in the chat if you can figure out which is which. And another question is the one created by the computer an artwork in the same way that the one created by Mondrian is? Another question about what is art. I'll just wait a few seconds and see if the answers filter through. Someone asked a question about assignment 1. Are we allowed to use our preferred English name instead of the name on your passport. Absolutely, you can use whatever name you would prefer as long as it's a name which is what you attach to yourself. I realize that some folks, go by one name on their passport. They might use another name. There's a variety of reasons why that's the case. I want to make sure that in this course, everyone's comfortable to use the name they would prefer, no matter what the reason is. Yeah, I think we've got seems to be a bit of split opinions. Left is the Mondrian, someone's saying, and right is the program. Now, I think there's some people saying, there's 2 people saying that the left is the Mondrian, 3 people saying that now. So I think that's the consensus. I don't actually know, right off the top of my head, which one is actually the real one, which one's the program. My thought too is that the one on the left is the Mondrian artwork and one on the right is the program. But that's just my view from looking at it. The right one doesn't quite look as Mondrianistic as the one on the left. And maybe what's giving it away to me or suggesting that to me is that the one on the left, even though has a lot of variation in the placement of blocks, it seems a little bit more ordered, whereas the one on the right seems disordered. And potentially, I would say that the one on the right looks a little bit more random than the one on the left. So, whether I'm right or not, I'm not sure, but this is a question we're going to be talking about today. Can you use randomness in artworks? And how can you use it to make artworks more artistic and not noisy or messy? Another thing about this is that it was one of the first instances in which people started to question, well, what is the role of an artist in creating an artwork? Because some have said, well, that the person creating this image was not an artist in quotation marks. They were an engineer or a programmer, some sort of technical person, and they wrote a program to simulate something. And that, by definition, isn't art because they're not an artist. They don't have the correct artistic intention, the correct brain in some way, some magical brain dust that would make you an artist, and other people just a normal person or a technical person. And because there was no artist behind this, it doesn't count. You could say that, make that argument. But I think now we look at computer art as being a completely valid form of artwork. So you can see how definitions of art have changed over this century. Let's keep moving. So random chance, randomizing things. What do we value in art anyway? Is sort of this high level view of what we're talking about today. Can art be random? And then finally, how can we use randomness in P5, the practical part of this lecture? I don't know why there's a blank page there. I guess I was going to write a slide and then I just wrote a blank page, but maybe I can use it as a spiel. If we go back to what we were discussing yesterday, we were looking at some history of art, history of questions of what art means, and we got up to the point of Pierre Mondrian and other artists in sort of the abstract or surrealist era, creating works that were highly intentional. So they were taking their idea about artworks, and a very good question, can a blank page be art? Probably. They would be taking artwork and taking away the representation. So instead of painting a tree, Mondrian started to paint just lines and colors and then just shapes. But they had a very highly intentional aspect to them. Every shape was supposed to be exactly there in an exact artistic process to create it. And what we're going to look at now is art where maybe the outcome was similarly abstract, but the input wasn't this process of precision. It was a process of chance, of rolling a dice to see what would happen. And the first example is this piece called Constellations by Jean Arp. Arp was a member of the Dada art movement, and the Dadaists were really questioning what art should be and pulling down the hierarchies about art. My colleague Tony Curran has spoken about Dadaism as sort of a reaction against the hierarchies in society which led, within European society, which led to the world wars in the 20th century. And the way he put it was, like, if these hierarchies that would give us, at the same time, give us ways of putting artists and certain art forms on a pedestal, would also cause people to decide that it was a good idea to kill each other, then maybe they weren't such good hierarchies after all. And the Dadaists were questioning those hierarchies, questioning what makes art art, questioning the role of an artist. What's so questioning about this piece? Because it looks abstractly a little bit similar to, well, boys, we did it. No more wars. Well, yeah, that's a good point. Abstractly, this does look like the work of Mondrian, but differently was the process. Whereas Mondrian was being very careful about drawing squares and colors in particular places, this piece was created by dropping pieces of paper onto another pieces of paper, and where they land, that's where they are. And then we just assign this the label art. So it's a random process of adding bits of paper together. Taking away that very precise process of choosing where the shapes should be. Here's another genre artwork, terrestrial forest form. This is a different kind of piece. It's a painting on wood, but again, very abstract in its form and related to this concept of removing the artist's process and redefining what that could be. Another very famous artist from the Dada movement was a gentleman by the name Marcel Duchamp. And this is one of Duchamp's early works. I think the original was supposed to be from 1913. And it's not a painting, it's an object. And it's an object which has been created by combining different other objects. So Duchamp has a bicycle wheel, and he has a wooden stool, and he's put these two things together and created this thing. And put it in a gallery, said this is called bicycle wheel, and said this is now art, it's in a gallery. So what's the process of this? Well, we've taken two different objects which are just household things. Maybe, I don't know what Duchamp's story was, but it could have just been stuff he had hanging around that seemed to go together in a strange and funny or whimsical way. They don't make any sense together. There's a seat and there's a wheel, but the seat isn't anything to do with a wheel. It's a floor seat, not a bicycle seat, and the wheel is supposed to be touching the ground. Now it's upside down. So the artisticness, some of the things which we would have defined as being artistic about artists' intentions have been removed from this artwork. The material is sort of random, and the use of it is random. But it certainly has this kind of special quality, doesn't it? A special something about it. So it has that je ne sais quoi, which we think makes things artistic. Bicycle wheel. Someone's just asked, can only humans create art? Well, that's the question I guess I was pointing to with the computer-based Mondrian artworks. Is that correctly an artwork if it was created in some way by an abstract computer process? Or is it supposed to be something different? Can these so-called Dadaist artworks be made digital? Well, you may remember from last lecture talking about Raphael Rosendahl. We also have a digital version of the bicycle wheel. Here it is. Whoop. There we go. The Rosendahl version of the same thing. Uh-oh. I've succeeded in breaking my computer. No, I'm back. This is perhaps the most famous work which is attributed to Michel Duchamp, or one of the most famous is called Fountain. And the concept was that an artist has taken this porcelain urinal, a piece of plumbing equipment, put it on its side on a pedestal and signed it with a name, Mutt, put a date on it, and now it's apparently an artwork, and it's called Fountain. So it's a lot of irony going on there, a lot of play, but also kind of bordering on the obscene. It's taking something which we think of as a bit gross, taking a toilet, and turning into this very strange thing. So the artwork here is in taking something which already exists and putting it on a pedestal, and this kind of movement within Dadaism was called readymades. So you would take something that already exists in the world and you just pop it on a pedestal and call that art. It's a ready-made thing. There's some question about whether Marcel Duchamp actually had the original idea for this. Perhaps it was one of his friends who had created this artwork and presented it within the original context in which it was exhibited, but it ended up attributed to Duchamp over time. Here's another ready-made example by an artist called Else von Freytag Loringhoven. And this one's called God. Again, related to plumbing, related to the built world, kind of gross and fanciful in the way it looks. And Else von Freytag Loringhoven was one of the people that maybe was the originator of the fountain idea. Again, that was from 1917. And this is Else von Freytag Loringhoven. In one of her other Dadaist artworks was dressing up in interesting costumes and doing things that would then be in a photo. So one example of that stream of work in Dadaism. So what's Dadaism? We're not really doing an art history course right here, but it involved a lot of randomization, randomizing materials, not just using paints or traditional materials, randomizing how you create an artwork, taking two things that are unrelated and putting them together, like the bicycle wheel and like the God sculpture. Randomizing cultural values. What do we say is involved in making an artwork? Because however way you slice it, picking up a urinal and putting it on a pedestal does not have a lot of intention related to it. It has a lot of playfulness. It has a lot of maybe disdain for the way that society would view art creation, but it was certainly a randomization of that. Now, moving into a slightly different direction, forward through randomness, rather than using randomness within artworks as a way of escaping what an artist has to say, maybe there was a sense in which randomness taps into artists' sort of true beliefs, their unconscious creativity, if you will. Someone's asked, is Armat a real person? No, Armat is not a real person. That was just a name made up by whoever put the urinal on the pedestal. This artwork is sort of representative of the unconscious world of an artist. This is by a very interesting artist called Leonora Carrington. Also in that same era, 1917, not exactly a Dadaist in the same way, but using this really interesting surrealism in their work, which is super fascinating. But Leonora Carrington was very interested in the internal worlds, our unconscious worlds, our dream worlds, and perhaps in some way this is what randomness is tapping into. A lot of artists at the time would have been influenced by ideas from psychology, which was a kind of new field at the time. Ideas of notable people like Freud and Jung, who had this idea that random things people do are maybe reflections of the world inside their unconsciousness, aspects of their cognition which they don't have access to themselves consciously. There's some hidden process within your brain occurring. So maybe random artwork making is giving you some kind of way of tapping into your unconscious. Someone's saying these are their sleep paralysis demons arguing. Oh, that's a bit scary. Okay, let's move on from this slightly scary, although very compelling artwork to this one again. We saw this last week. Can art ever be random? Jackson Pollock's Blue Poles from 1952. And as you know, if you're here in Canberra, you can go and see this artwork. It's one of the very famous artworks within our National Gallery of Australia. It was purchased in the 70s, causing some outcry about the fact that it cost a lot of money at the time. $1.5 million at the time was a lot of money for an artwork, and it was the most ever spent on an American artist's artwork. And then it looks like this, and people would have walked in and said, what even is going on here? You've just bought a mess. You haven't bought an artwork. You've bought a mess. But what I think I'm leading you to the idea that this is not just a mess. This is an artwork that includes a lot of random variation. And in fact, it's not just random sprays of paint here. They're sprays of paint which have been placed there through a defined process, a defined artistic process, which includes randomness, but it's not entirely random. And that process leads to an artwork which is actually very compelling. Another example of Jackson Pollock. There's a video here. I'm just going to skip to a frame of this. Open a new tab, please. Oh. Autoplay blocked. I'm just going to run in here, find some time where this guy's doing it. Here's not Jackson Pollock himself. It's a artist called Corey D'Augustine, who is demonstrating how Jackson Pollock created these artworks. And so what he's doing here is loading up a paintbrush with a bunch of very loose paint, very wet, liquidy paint, and moving the brush across the artwork in very precise ways, but because there's space between the canvas and the brush, or the implement he uses, the paint sprays a little bit randomly onto the canvas. So this is a way of using intention. Where he puts his hand is where he's decided to put his hand, but also using randomness. And that was the process that Jackson Pollock used, not just with brushes, but also sort of big sticks or little trowels or little things which would contain liquid, turkey basters, big sort of pipettes, and use that to carry this paint towards the artwork and contain it until he was ready to put it on, and then have that random process interfering with the intentional strokes. So are these things totally random, or are there some rules about Jackson Pollock? Are there rules that Jackson Pollock had to follow, and his other painterly colleagues who are together maybe called action painters? And one thing I would point to is the fact that these painters did have a process, and it's the sort of the performance of their process which is included in the artwork, not just the final product. But as one other example, here's an artwork by Joan Mitchell. We've got someone mentioning happy little accidents, talking about Bob Ross in the comments, which is a good place to be going. We'll get there in this lecture. But Joan Mitchell was an artist of the same era of Jackson Pollock, but has continued to create artworks in a similar style much later. So here's a piece called Riviere from 1990. And this one shows some of the rules, or the fact that there was a painter behind this. It wasn't completely random, because if you can imagine someone painting this, they would have to go up to a wall or reach out on the floor and be able to reach right to the top, but not quite. So you can see at the top of the, at the top of the artwork, there's these kind of curves, because that's as far as Joan Mitchell could reach. Oops, I really want red. There we go. So you bring your brush down, you can only reach that far. This is the center of where the artist was standing. and these brush strokes always going down. So there's sort of, you can imagine a person standing here with a brush. So the part of the rules or constraints for these artworks were the form of the human body, the form of the person creating them. Rules and randomness. What are the rules that constrain the randomness within an artwork? And perhaps it's these rules which are what make something a little bit more artistic than just random noise. When you have rules placed to prevent something becoming messy or too messy, but constrain it in certain ways. Here's another example of using rules. So these ones are much more, these artworks are by Stanley Whitney are much more constrained in their construction, shapes and simple colors. But Stanley Whitney was also using randomness because these were created by piece, creating shapes, choosing colors, following certain rules, and sort of going systematically through the through this artwork, not choosing what you're going to do next until you get up to it. So rather compare that to Mondrian, where everything was planned out and perfect, and this one is more of a procedural process of choosing what to do next, and still including randomness, but not including any mess, and not being noisy at all, because it had a lot of rules. Here's another artwork. This is a slightly weird one, a mixed media installation from 2000, so pretty late. This is the kind of thing that I like to think about when I think of interactive or computer-based art. It's art which is mixed media, it's got electronics, it's got computers, it's a bit of everything combined in a really interesting way. Looks pretty wild right now, but you'll understand what's going on in a minute. What you're seeing here is a picture of the artist, a picture of Tim Hawkinson, with different kind of parts of his face attached to little mechanisms which can move them. So by changing the little mechanisms, the picture of Tim Hawkinson has a different expression because his facial features will be moved in different ways. It's like kind of going, ooh, having little claws on his face, but of course he doesn't have little claws on his face. It's a picture of him. There are other interactive artists who do this sort of in the real with little claws on their face, but it's a bit wild for today, so we'll not go there. Sorry, I bumped the mic there. But what is it which is causing these movements of his face? Well, it's a little box down here. Here's this image. This is the output, and this is the input. It's a little construction, and you might just be able to see down the bottom corner. I think I've got the image settings a bit wrong for this, but I'll full screen it so you can see a bit better. This is the information going this way to control the little motors, which are going to pull his face into different ways. Grumpy. Stop being silly, Charles. Okay. There's the output data. Where's the input? Well, down here you can see a little TV screen, an old school TV screen, tuned to a random channel, which just has noise, random black and white patterns on the screen. If you remember old school TV, if you weren't on an actual channel, it would just, the sound would be like shh, and the vision would be just black and white random pixels, or they used to call it snow, right? You get a snow channel. And attached to that screen, there are little light sensors that are picking up individual pixels from the screen or close to, and each of those would be connected to one of the motors or to some computer in here which makes a decision about what to do on the, I'm just going to draw a brain for the computer, brain stem, and that gets the input, and then whatever it's programmed to do, it interprets this random information into this structured artwork. So this artwork has a lot of randomness. It has the random input from that television completely driving the process. And then at the end, there's something which is a portrait. And of course, it's kind of grotesque because it's a strange picture of Tim Hawkinson being stretched in different ways. But it's still an ordered, recognizable artwork. It's not a mess exactly. It's not noise. it's constrained noise, constrained randomness, creating variation in this expression. Last, or maybe second to last point before we do some demonstration time, breaking down art into steps. This is where I get to the Bob Ross point. Here's a TV artist pointing to different shapes. And when we think of TV artists, Bob Ross is a good example. When I grew up as a kid, there was a show called Art Attack, which I used to really love watching. And there was this presenter, I've forgotten his name, I think his first name's Neil, but I don't know his last name, a British show, and he would create these huge artworks out of lots of weird things that kids would have. And he would say, this is an art attack, this is an art attack, this is art attack, and make some cool thing out of stuff you'd find around the house. And his role as a TV artist, similar to Bob Ross, was to provide instructions for creating a work of art. Instructions. So here is a TV artist pointing to shapes, and he's saying something like, well, these are the basic shapes that create everything in the world, and you have to use these shapes and these perspectives to help you to understand how to paint a scene. And then he might go on to building a scene with perspectives and using these different shapes in different ways, putting building blocks together, giving precise instructions for someone at home to recreate that artwork. And many people now know about Bob Ross, who's become a bit of a meme on the internet with happy little accidents, but it's the same idea, right? Bob Ross gives you precise instructions for how to create a sunset, how to create mountains, how to create nice little alpine trees, and then if you follow along, you get these wonderful sort of Alaskan scenes, a lot like what Bob Ross created, which is a lot of fun. Now this particular TV artist, I've forgotten his name, but his nephew was also an artist and wanted to use some similar process, a relative of his, in creating art. And so he created, that person was named Allan McCollum, and he creates these artworks which are many, many variations of building blocks, the same building blocks. So here's some of these variations on display. Here's another example, thousands of variations of these little forms. And they don't just have to be paintings, they can be little sculptures as well. Thousands of forms created probably with a computer and a digital kind of manufacture technology to create these little objects. You can imagine doing this with 3D printing, producing infinite little sculptures. How did he do this? Well, he had software where he'd recorded lots of different components and was combining those components randomly to create variations that all look quite appealing, or they look similar. They don't look noisy, they don't look messy, they look similar. Rip the trees, someone says. Well, yeah, rip them. I suppose they'll grow back and it might have been worth it for art. Here's an example of putting these different shapes together. Neil Buchanan, someone said, that's the guy's name from Art Attack. He was a TV artist that appealed to me as a youngster and still appeals to me. So now here we get to the practical advice for this lecture. Practical advice. I want you to think about a toolkit for randomness. How can you introduce randomness into your artworks for Comp 1720? You can do it today. I want to be very careful in these lectures to introduce things that only rely on what we've discussed in the lectures. So I know that there's a lot more to programming. Many of you have done programming courses or might be taking other courses simultaneously, but we're always going to focus in this lecture on what we can do today with the tools we've already introduced. So we can do some randomness with the tools we've already introduced. And what I want to present to you is a function called random, open bracket, close bracket. This is your friend. Random, open bracket, close bracket. This random is going to let you introduce variation rather than noise into your artwork. Another thing you could do to introduce randomness is getting input from a person, and this is where it gets a bit tricky, using mouse X and mouse Y. I'll talk about that in a minute, but here's just a brief primer over the random function. Random with no arguments will turn into a number from 0 up to 1. Any number between 0 and 1, it could be 0.761, 0.2358, anything. Random 10 does the same thing, except it's a number from 0 up to 10. It will never actually give you 10. It will give you very close to 10, but not 10. Just random numbers in that range. And the last one is random with two numbers, random 25 and 50, which will give you a number from 25 all the way to 50. And in each case, all of these random numbers will have decimal places. They're not going to just be natural integers. Someone's saying, is drawing a random shape possible in P5? I think we should do it. Let's do that as a test, okay? Random shapes. So you can have a look at the reference if you want to. There's some details about random which we don't go through in particular, but it will make more sense later in the course. But for now, we can just take it as read. We'll do the input from a person in a minute, but let's try to make a random shape. Demo time. Demos. That was a little demo song for you. What song is that? Yeah, I'll remember what that song was in a second. It's probably something really embarrassing, but there you go. Now, someone said, and I quote, is it possible to create random shapes? Well, let's have a go at creating some random shapes. So I'm just going to make myself, it's Hello by Cat Empire, isn't it? Sorry, I forgot. How could I forget Cat Empire? Hello, hello. I don't know why they had that little vocal fry in it. Okay. I want to make a shape. I just typed shape into the reference. Now, you already know how to make rectangles and ellipses, but maybe you haven't tried to do this thing called shape yet. Begin shape. And begin shape is a way of creating any kind of shape. And that means you get to put in your, you get to place in the canvas vertexes, which are the corners of your shape. And then if you say begin shape, put some vertexes down and end shape, then it sort of closes the loop on this shape and then draws it just like it would be drawing a rectangle. And this shape happens to be a rectangle, which is sort of cheating, but you can make any shaped thing. So what I'm going to do is say begin shape. I think we'll make it start with a simple one. We'll do a triangle. Begin shape, copying it out from the reference. Vertex, I don't know, maybe 50-50 to start with, top left corner. Then maybe we'll go out 150, 75. Vertex, somewhere in between, 83, comma, 122. And then we're going to end shape. And we have to type this C-L-O-S-E. Someone was asking about that on the forum the other day. Sometimes there are special arguments in P5. And close is one of them. It's a sort of special argument which you probably can only use with begin shape, and it's just giving a specific instruction to how to do it. And you can usually tell that it's something special because it's colored blue. Okay, it's not a string, is it? Because it doesn't have quotation marks around it. It's not text. It's something else within JavaScript. Now I've put this in the setup because I don't want it to draw it. I just want to draw it once and then not loop that draw. So I haven't put anything in my draw loop. I'm just doing the setup for this. And I might just give myself a fill color. Not file list, silly computer. Fill list. I'll do red. Okay, where's my sketch? Here it is. There's my random triangle. Lovely. Maybe I can make this a bit bigger. Multiply it by 10. Will that be too big? Oh, now it's huge. I don't want that. In fact, at this stage, we could just make random triangles. So I'm going to put some random locations in here. And in fact, I'm just going to do 1 and then copy it. So if I just did random with no arguments, I'll get a number between 0 and 1, and that's not going to be much good. I just want to think about what kind of number I want to get. So potentially I want one which each of my points needs to fit within the window, but I don't want it to fit any further within the window, anywhere outside it. So my way of getting the width of the window is to get this constant, this variable, called window width. Someone's asking if we can do this with curves. I think there is a way, I just can't remember off the top of my head. We'll just focus on drawing polygons first, and then we'll think about curves. So really I want random from 0 up to the edge, window width, and random from 0 at the top of the screen all the way to the bottom, which will be window height. So I only need one parameter for that. So now we've got 1 point. For my triangle I need 3 points, so I'm just going to do that 3 times. There we go, there's a random triangle. Should we get another one? Control S, bam, another random triangle. Now this is pretty cool. Doesn't this remind you of that first artwork from the Dadaists, which I showed you? It's like we're dropping pieces of paper onto our canvas randomly. And in fact, maybe I'd like to make a couple. So I'm going to do 4 random triangles. There's my random triangles. 4 more. Maybe I'll change the fill so you can see some transparency. That might be nice. You can see through them a little bit. You can see how they overlap. Yeah. Nerd snipe, what's the average area of this triangle? Ah! A nerd snipe, for those who don't know, a nerd snipe is a question which you can ask someone nerdy, and it's an interesting question and not very easy to figure out the answer, and they just sort of sit there looking into the middle distance, thinking about the question, seeing if they can figure out the answer, and then, no, it's a bit too hard, or you have to get a bit of paper out, so you sort of stuck them in a thought loop where they have to create answers to questions. Ooh, curve vertex. That's interesting. We can make curves, curve triangles. Is it in this? Well, there's other vertexes, no. I'm just going to look up curve vertex, if you don't mind. Curve. Well, that's not quite what I want. Curve vertex. How's that work? So I can do a curve. Yeah, anyway, the nerds in the group can, I'm going to do a trick you may not know in VS Codium. If you select something and you want to select all of it, you can press Control D, 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 D. That's selected every single one. Now I've got a cursor on every single one. I can change them all simultaneously. Curve vertex. This is why you come to the practical art lectures. You get all the good hints. Let's see if this works. Whoops. I'm going to save it and see if I get something. Oh, then I get some weird and wonderful curves. One of them's gone kind of strange, right? It's like this. Yeah, so this is now making me a shape that rather than a triangle, it's like got one big curved edge, which is probably a little bit odd. Maybe not what I wanted, but it looks cool. It's got a little bit of je ne sais quoi, maybe, not a surplus of it. And maybe if you were thinking about an artwork like this, if you were doing this art attack, this is an art attack, this is an art attack, this is art attack. If you were doing this art attack, you would think of some way of making this a little bit more interesting to the user. Now I'll just talk about the sort of last slide of the day before finishing. Another way of getting some random numbers in, numbers you can't predict, is using the mouse X and mouse Y variables, which gives you the location within the window of the mouse in the browser. And we've used that to kind of control this painting process on the screen, but maybe you could use it a bit more subtly to introduce variations. So I'm just actually going to go back to one. I'll make some variables for this. Instead of using random directly, I'm just going to make one random curvy triangle. I'm going to do it within draw. By the way, if I just run this with this, it'll just, the problem with this is that it's going to choose the random number every single frame. It'll draw it, start again, and just draw new triangles every single time, or new weird curved shapes. And you can see it's just going to fill the screen full of weird curved shapes until it's all red. That's not what I want. I want it to choose one particular one. So I'm going to say try x1 equals random. I'll declare them all. Let try y1. Let try x1. Let I want to make all 6 coordinates. Let's try x3. Let's try y3. I've forgotten all my semicolons. I'll just put those all in. And then I'm going to make them all in the setup. I'm going to make random numbers. Try x1 equals random window width. Oops, semicolon. Got a random number there. Ooh. 3. Can you see what I'm doing? I'm using, taking advantage of my flow. That needs to be a capital X, doesn't it? Taking advantage of my flow because the setup function is only used once. Random window height. I'm almost done for this lecture. This is the last thing I'm going to do. Last little artwork of the day with one happy little triangle. Down here, I'll get rid of those. I'm going to use this variable, try x1, and this one will be, oops, try y1. I'll just add in something new for those. 3. Someone giving me ideas? So I get a different triangle every time now, and it stays the same. But let's add a little bit of user-generated variation. I'm going to say 0.1 times mouse x. I'm actually going to confuse this. I'm going to use mouse x on the first y. On the second, I'll just do it on the first one, and we can see what action this has. 0.1 times mouse y plus my x variable, and then mouse 0.1 times mouse x will be plus the y variable of the first point. So now you can see it moving around a bit. I'll just get rid of that fill, and I'll refresh the background each time so it is, you can see it. Whoa. So this is definitely not really, you're not exactly controlling it, you're just giving yourself some variation. That's neat. I'll try controlling all 3 simultaneously. Well, that's something which is very hard to, it's hard to feel like I'm in real control of this shape. That's not a very good shape. I'll choose a different one. Not truly random anymore, is it? Hard to feel that you've got true control, but you kind of get this variation as I move my mouse around, which is, oh, it's kind of weird. It's kind of freaky. Weird. I'm going to put this one on the forum in a minute. I'm just going to copy my code. So, by the way, any questions? I'll just get my final slide somewhere. Oops, there's my face. Frame count, another good way of introducing some variation into your... That was my practice. There's more reading. Go and look on the lecture slides if you'd like to click any of these links and see some different cool random examples. If you've got a question, pop it into the chat. I'm just going to store this online and send you a cool link. And you can talk about it in the forum if you want to. Log in. Oops. Got my next meeting waiting for me. Autofill. And there's my artwork. Save that one. I think I can share it from here. Someone got a question? No. Oh, one of the tutors has asked an excellent question, which I'm going to talk about when we get to the forum in a minute. Share. Oh, I can embed. So suppose I'm a student and I want to write a pre-lab post. And I might decide I'm just going to go to the forum and post it. But there might be, I'll see if I can find an example here. They might have all been fixed so far, but here's one. Here's a pre-lab post that's posted in the Comp 1720 category, and it has the week 2 tag. Now, this post is missing something, and what it's missing is being in the pre-lab category. And what you got to know, this is really important, is that the pre-lab category is the only place we look for your pre-lab posts. So if you've done a pre-lab post and it's not in that category, we're not going to find it, and you're not going to get a mark for it until we do. So the only way for you to fix this situation and get the marks for the posts that you've created is to make sure they're in the pre-lab category and they have the week-n, week 2, week 3, week 4 tag so that we can find these posts. So I'm going to do Charles's random triangles from the lecture. Here's my random triangle. What do you think? Is this art? And that should create... Oh, what? Where's my nice iframe? Oh well. I thought it would work. Edit, get that one. You can see the code with this one too. Get rid of that. Oh. Well, there's some way to get this working, but I haven't quite got it working yet. Someone in the forum can help me in a minute. Go have a look at my nice, not enough Sonichu. Not enough Sonichu. That was our definition of art last week, wasn't it? Okay, we're well done for this lecture. Thank you very much for coming, everybody. Enjoy the remainder of the labs today, and I will see you folks on Monday morning. Catch you later. Whoops, I haven't got to my outro. There it is.